Okay, so imagine this for a second. You've got these highly trained federal air marshals, the ones we count on, the sort of silent guardians up there since 9/11. Suddenly, they're not tracking down threats on your flight. Instead, they're, well, one of them actually said, walking the aisles and handing out ham sandwiches on deportation planes. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into this really critical shift that's happening, maybe a bit behind the scenes, with the Federal Air Marshal Service. We've gathered a whole stack of reports, union statements, government data too. Our mission here is to cut through all the noise and figure out what's really going on, why it's happening, and what it means for, well, for all of us.
Exactly. And it's definitely more than just shuffling personnel around. This really touches on some big things. Aviation security, for one, but also these complex budget maneuvers and even public opinion about immigration. We'll try to look at it from all the angles the sources give us so you get the full picture.
Okay, let's unpack it then. So we're talking about a pretty big redeployment, right? Since June 2025, something like 200 federal air marshals. That's what, maybe 10% of the whole force diverted from their main job, counterterrorism on commercial flights. So what exactly is this new assignment? What are they actually doing on these flights?
Right. Their new role is providing security on ICE deportation flights, immigration and customs enforcement. And what's really striking here, I mean, air marshals have helped out on border stuff before, in the past, but they have never actually been used on the deportation flights themselves. This is totally new, a first time for this kind of specialized force in this role. It's a pretty unprecedented shift.
And it's not just security like we might think, is it? Yeah. I mean, our sources say they're guarding detainees, sure, but also serving meals.
Yeah.
Checking people for lice, even like cleaning the planes. That quote about handing out ham sandwiches really sticks out. Yeah. And apparently clocking overtime while doing it.
Yeah.
That's a world away from counterterrorism work.
It really is. Absolutely. Yeah. Now, the TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, they say this is all part of supporting the administration's interagency effort for mass deportations. But interestingly, our sources also suggest that a lot of these agents felt, well, pressured into taking these assignments, which says something.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting for me. If you pull these highly trained people away from commercial flights, what happens to security there? Doesn't that, leave some pretty big gaps?
You're hitting on a key concern. It absolutely does. These redeployments, they definitely create vulnerabilities in aviation security. And this is happening when the TSA is already, let's be honest, under scrutiny for past failures. Remember back in 2015, undercover tests, weapons getting through checkpoints 95% of the time.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. That was bad.
Right. And the sources we looked at also point to current problems. Staffing shortages, 374 airports out of 430 affected. Plus, remember in July 2025, they relaxed shoe screening? To speed things up, critics are calling that reckless, especially when you're draining resources like the air marshals.
And the timing seems off.
Yeah, The main point here is diverting these specialized people. It can really weaken the whole security system they were meant to protect.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk money. This whole shuffle, what does it mean for, taxpayer dollars?
Yeah.
And what about private contractors? Feels like there's something there.
That's a really important question. There's definitely an overlap, or at least a potential one, with private contractors. Take GEO Group, for instance. They have a contract with ICE specifically for in-flight security on these deportation flights. It's worth $25 million a year.
$25 million. Okay.
Exactly. So now you have federal air marshals doing duties that arguably GEO Group was already paid to manage. And this is leading to some pretty strong allegations of contract fraud. Sonia Labasco, she's the executive director of the Air Marshal National Council. She put it very bluntly. She said, and I'm quoting here, "We are supplementing a billion-dollar company's security staff for these flights."
Wow. So the argument is taxpayers are basically paying twice, once for the GEO contract and again for the marshal's time and overtime.
That's precisely the allegation, yes. That taxpayers might be footing the bill twice for the same service. It raises serious questions about federal contracting.
Okay, so no surprise. This whole thing has really stirred things up internally. What are we hearing from the unions? The Air Marshal Group?
Oh, definitely. The Air Marshal National Council, the AMNC, they are not happy, not holding back at all. Back in July 2025, they actually sent a cease and desist letter. Sent it right to DHS and TSA, demanding they stop these redeployments immediately.
A cease and desist. Okay, so what's their main argument?
They're hitting on three main points, based on our sources. First, national security risks. Simple as that. Pulling marshals off commercial flights weakens our defense against hijackings. The AMNC is really clear. Air marshals exist only to stop hijackings, not to help with deportations. That's their sole mission, legally speaking.
Yeah, that's point one. What else?
Second, they're citing unsafe working conditions. Some agents are reporting they're unarmed on these deportation flights.
Unarmed, really, with detainees.
Yeah, unarmed despite potentially volatile situations. That's a major concern for them. And third, it's back to the money. They call it improper subsidization. Basically, taxpayers bankrolling GEO Group's work. They argue using marshals for duties GEO is contracted for might even breach federal procurement rules, the rules about how government contracts are supposed to work.
Those are some pretty serious charges. National security, safety, potentially breaking contracting rules. Has the TSA or DHS responded directly to these specific points, especially the security risk one?
That's a good question. Based on the sources we reviewed, there doesn't seem to be a direct public point-by-point rebuttal from TSA or DHS addressing those specific AMNC arguments.
Okay. And is this opposition, is it unanimous among the marshals? Or is there another side to this story?
No, it's not unanimous. There's actually a competing union, the Air Marshal Association, and they support the move. They're calling it a vital security function, which is, the complete opposite stance.
Like a competing union supports it.
Yes, and interestingly, they're also lobbying to break away from the TSA entirely. So there's this internal politics layer, too. This split, this rift within the Air Marshal ranks themselves, it obviously complicates any effort to stop the program. It shows the force itself is divided on this.
House divided then?
Yeah.
Wow, so some marshals are okay trading, high stakes counterterrorism for, checking for lice and getting overtime pay?
Yeah.
Certainly a different definition of mission critical.
Ooh.
Okay, let's zoom out now. Look at the bigger picture driving this. It seems to be about the sheer volume of deportations, right? The administration promised the largest deportation operation in American history, and that seems to require a massive number of flights. Our sources show ICE flights. They surged 34% just from January to June 2025. That's nearly 4,800 flights.
Yeah, the numbers are pretty staggering.
And in June alone, you had 209 international deportation flights, plus another 700 domestic flights, these so-called shuffle flights, moving detainees between centers.
And the cost associated with that volume is huge. Deporting just one person, the estimate is around $10,500.
$10,000 per person.
Roughly, yes. So if the goal is, say, 1 million deportations, like has been mentioned, well, you do the math, that's $10.5 billion.
Billion. Wow. Okay, so where does that kind of money come from? Especially when we know ICE started the year with a budget deficit. What was it, like $230 million?
Exactly, significant deficit. So to make up for it and to fund this surge, money is being moved around, shifted from other agencies. We're talking funds being pulled from the TSA itself, from the Coast Guard, even from cybersecurity agencies like CISA.
Is that normal? Moving funds around like that?
Well, past administrations have shifted DHS funds before, yes, but the scale of this, according to our sources, is unprecedented.
And meanwhile, you've got the marshals on these ICE flights racking up thousands in extra overtime. Some are quoted saying it's an easy gig. It just adds another layer to the cost.
It does. And connecting this to the sort of even bigger picture, it now involves the military, too, directly. For the first time ever, the U.S. military is flying deportation missions using C-17 cargo planes.
Military planes for deportations.
Yes. And what's really interesting there is those military flights, they actually cost more per person deported. And they carry fewer people, maybe 80, compared to over 100 on a charter flight.
So it's less efficient and more expensive. Why?
That's the question. It suggests the priority is purely on scaling up the operation, almost regardless of cost or efficiency. And these missions, some are incredibly long, like 40-hour flights to India with detainees shackled the whole time. They've drawn quite a bit of global condemnation. Mexico, for example, refuses to accept deportees arriving on military aircraft. So that forces longer, more complicated routes, adding even more cost.
And there was something about Guantanamo Bay, too.
Right. Another unprecedented move, using Guantanamo Bay detention facilities for non-citizens arrested within the U.S., not at the border, but domestically. It's another sign of just how far the system is being stretched or altered.
So, massive costs. Unprecedented military involvement, international friction, and private companies are right in the middle of it. Professor Adam Goodman, who wrote The Deportation Machine, he calls companies like GEO Group part of an ICE industrial complex. Is that fair?
Well, Goodman's point is that these private firms handle so much of the process now. It's not just in-flight security, it's ground logistics, running detention centers, a huge part of the infrastructure. So, yeah, the term ICE industrial complex highlights just how intertwined government deportation efforts and private corporate interests have become.
Okay, so with all this happening, the scale, the cost, the methods, what's the public reaction? How are Americans feeling about these escalating deportation efforts?
Well, the polling data we looked at, specifically Gallup polls, suggests public opinion is actually shifting against it. Support for mass deportations, it reportedly fell from 47% in 2024 down to 38% in 2025.
A drop. Okay. What are the main complaints or concerns people have?
Key things coming through in the polls are 62% disapproval of the administration's overall immigration policies, 55% opposing more detention facilities and these kind of military-style deportations. Independents specifically seem wary. 66% disapprove of ICE's enforcement actions. And a clear majority, 61%, oppose sending people to foreign prisons as part of deportation.
So falling support, specific objections to the methods. Where does this leave things? What happens next?
It's a critical question. The sources sort of point to two levels: short-term realities and longer-term implications. Short-term, expect air marshals to stay on those ICE flights, probably through 2025 as deportations continue to ramp up. GEO Group's contract, that's likely going to face some serious scrutiny in Congress. And expect budgets at places like TSA and the Coast Guard to keep getting squeezed, which means, security trade-offs elsewhere.
And the longer term. What are the big potential consequences down the road?
They could be really significant. First, obviously, is aviation security. Continued vulnerability on commercial flights because fewer marshals are there. That increases hijacking risks, theoretically.
Yeah.
Second, these budgetary dominoes. If you keep pulling funds from critical agencies like CISA, that's the cybersecurity agency, you could create totally new security holes in completely different areas,
Right.
like our digital infrastructure.
Didn't think about that connection. Cybersecurity.
Yeah, it's all interconnected. And finally, the courts. This whole situation is likely headed for legal challenges. The courts will probably have to decide. Can government agencies legally repurpose highly specialized agents like air marshals for missions that are way outside their original legally defined purpose? That could set a major precedent.
Yeah, that legal question seems huge. So, as Adam Goodman noted, right from the early days, people looked to make a buck off deportation. It seems that machine is running faster than ever now. But, as our sources show pretty clearly, the costs, financial, security, maybe even ethical, they're really starting to pile up. Well, we've taken quite a deep dive today into this whole complex web around the Federal Air Marshals reassignment, from handing out sandwiches to the union fights, the huge costs, and these big impacts on national security and even public opinion.
Yeah, what's really striking when you lay it all out is how one decision, reallocating this very specific force can just ripple outwards, affecting things that seem totally disconnected at first glance: flight safety, cybersecurity budgets, even, like you said, the profits of private companies. It really makes you think about the trade-offs, doesn't it? The often unseen consequences when these large-scale policy shifts happen.
Absolutely. We hope this deep dive gave you a clearer picture of what's going on, something to keep thinking about, perhaps. If specialized roles like air marshals can be shifted like this, what other specialized government roles might be next? Or what new vulnerabilities pop up when critical resources get pulled away, maybe unexpectedly, from where they were always meant to be?